Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren here, Question Period Canada. I've got some news. Funny thing happened on the community of our channel. People want to see the Liberals just looking bad. I'm very happy to show that. Like, I'm pretty excited to make this video because the Liberals, just when you watch them, that's what I want Canadians to see. Just see them so they can judge for themselves and be like, these guys are lying to me, dividing, distracting, gaslighting, like just being dishonest. This is going to be a pretty fun video to make. Like, have some patience, but we'll try to have some fun with it. These are the Liberal cabinet ministers, and they're brutal. They're just awful, but we'll have some fun with it. Let's go. Let's check them out.
Laid out the tough economic times that Canadians are facing. You say you're seized with the issue. Did you consider that backdrop when you decided to take an $80,000 free vacation?
Mr. Speaker,
as many Canadians did, I stayed with friends over the holidays.
Many Canadians don't have access to a $90,000 free vacation. So can you just explain a bit more the thinking as to why you take these vacations and how you think Canadians receive them?
The Prime Minister doubled the debt, drove inflation and interest rates to their highest levels in a generation. He said he had no choice. Every penny he spent was necessary.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is common sense for working families across our country.
$80,000 vacation, which he got for free. He said, like most Canadians, friends welcomed him for that vacation. He took two, not one, but two private jets.
Mr. Speaker, we've already heard Conservative hypocrisy.
Still have sand in his ears from his Jamaican vacation.
The Conservative leader likes to talk about the challenges Canadians are facing on the cost of living, but he refuses to take action and support them.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Mr. Speaker, I fully understand the importance of looking after the land, being a farmer, I fully understand, and taking steps to prepare the industry for the future. Mr. Speaker, that's why we invested as a government $1.5 billion.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Commentator Tucker Carlson, and in that speech, one of them which focused and which had the Premier Danielle Smith attend, we heard attacks on francophones, homophobic jokes, and traditional best hits of MAGA politicians. Mr.
Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
But being a farmer, she must fully understand it's so important that we invest in what farmers do.
Impressive mix of arrogance and indifference to the suffering of many Canadians. Mr. Speaker, when will this government take a break from their Jamaican junkets and actually address the housing hell in Canada?
Mr. Speaker, with respect, my honourable colleague is simply trying to prey on the very real anxiety that families are feeling across this country. While at the same time, she advances a plan that will build fewer homes than we are already on track to build.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
We are investing directly in affordable housing. The Conservatives want to cut it.
More empty words while Canadians are spiraling out of control. Rent has increased by 22%.
Here's the Conservative approach to policies that will actually help people is to prey on their anxieties rather than advance ideas that will actually address them.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've learned just now about one specific thing Canadians will cut.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, of course, the member was able to hear this directly from the Ethics Commissioner this morning, but he appeared at committee and has been very clear on this matter.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the Leader of the Opposition is aware, but...
You know, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to being out of touch with regular Canadians, let me tell you what was out of touch.
$80,000 vacation, which he got for free.
After all the intimidation and threats from the Conservatives towards parliamentarians on 234, it turns out the only farming the Conservative Party cares about is rage farming.
I know for a fact that farmers are asking that minister to axe the carbon tax. That PM promised that the Senate would be independent, but the actions this past week prove that that is a complete farce. We know he bullied paid his senators. The PM himself was on the phone over the weekend telling them they had to gut Bill C-234. The Prime Minister lied, and his minions continue to lie about
The honourable member who got here at the same time I did knows full well that you can't use that word. I would say the honourable member should retract that and apologize. The honourable member Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, I will not apologize to that Prime Minister when he continues to lie.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the least vulnerable in Canada.
Order. Order. The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, well, the Conservatives continue to do all that they can to paralyze government. We are here to work on behalf of Canadians and happy to do so, Mr. Speaker.
Lots of photo ops, lots of spending.
Continues to repeat inaccurately is not the case. And I was very pleased that Premier Ford thanked our government at the event yesterday for working with
facts. They brought in catch and release bail.
Today, when the Minister of Public Safety and I were with the Premier of Ontario, what we announced was $121 million of funding to help with attacking crime in places like Ontario. What that will do will help to stop this flow of what we're seeing in terms of auto theft. The other thing.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Thank my colleague for having done so much work last week, voting 30 hours in support of the work that we're doing together. Meanwhile, I completely understand how much the situation in Gaza is dire. It's one of the worst places in the world to live in. The Minister of Immigration and I are working actively to find a very compassionate approach when it comes to Canadian.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Did you consider that backdrop when you decided to take an $80,000 free vacation?
Mr. Speaker.
When the Conservatives had the chance to stand up for First Nations people, they voted against the measures that Indigenous communities need every single day to deliver things like clean water, Mr. Speaker, to deliver things like education, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Stop misleading Canadians. Research coming out of the University of Calgary last week shows that their plan to make pollution free again will only benefit those earning over $250,000 a year and hurt almost everybody else. The Conservative leader says that he cares about affordability, but last week in the middle of the night they voted to cut affordable housing construction, cut school food program, cut dental care for the most vulnerable, cut affordable child care. Shame, shame, shame.
Prime Minister, shut down the slush fund and get Canadians back their money.
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, it is shocking but not surprising to see the Conservative ideology in full display, Mr. Speaker. Now what you're saying, Mr. Speaker, is that the Conservative are willing to attack anyone and any institution that would fight for climate change, Mr. Speaker. Even institutions that have been voted by the Parliament in 2001, Mr. Speaker. Now what the Conservative are doing, they're calling the integrity into question of one of the top accounting firms.
Why didn't he fire these corrupt Liberal directors?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, it's great to see my honourable colleague from Atlantic Canada stand up. I wish he stood up last week, and I wish he and his 7 other colleagues stood up last week. On this side of the House, we know the great work that the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency does for communities, for not-for-profits, for businesses. If he truly believed in the great work of ACOA, he would have done what his colleague from Caribou Prince George did, who abstained on his beliefs. So what's he going to say to the people of...
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
To vote against a carbon tax that they see as harming farmers, that they would vote against all funding for Canada's poultry, egg and dairy farmers? Is that a way to support farmers? Is the way to support First Nations to cut all housing for new housing on reserve for First Nations?
Let me clarify all of the billion-dollar aid that we have provided to Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. Carl Gustav anti-tank weapon systems, 155mm ammunition, armored vehicles, Mr. Speaker. We have trained over 40,000 members of the Ukrainian armed forces, and we will stand on the side of democracy hypocrisy every single time.
To the Prime Minister on our support for Ukraine. Ensuring Ukraine's victory is vital to Canada's security. Ukraine must win, otherwise Europe, the US, and Canada will be next in defending ourselves against Russia's aggression. So every Ukrainian fighting today is one less Canadian who will have to fight in the future. Every dollar we spend today is millions of dollars less that we will have to spend in the future. We understand this, but Conservatives continue to vote against support for Ukraine. Against
is right. Before the holidays, Canadians all witnessed the Leader of the Opposition forcing his caucus to turn their back on Ukraine. They turned their backs on fundamental Canadian principles and bowed down to the pro-Russian narrative. I know the Leader won't change his mind, but Ukrainian Canadians across the prairies are hoping that at least some brave Conservative MPs will do the right thing and vote their conscience and their principles. Let everyone in this House who stands with Ukraine stand up and be counted.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
I know it's Wednesday, I know it's caucus day, I know that people are primed up, but I'm going to ask members, please let us restrain ourselves so that we can hear the questions and we can hear the answers. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what this Prime Minister has is a pro-Russia energy policy that forces the Europeans to buy their energy from Russia by denying Canadians the ability to sell our own.
Dr. Zeus is actually concerned about his food security.
This Liberal government doesn't know Jack, who's a grain farmer from southern Manitoba, who's paying $6,000 in carbon taxes on his most recent bill. And when this Liberal government quadruples their punishing carbon tax, he'll be paying $24,000 in a single month. How will the Prime Minister advise that Jack pays that $24,000? Will he be raising prices on Canadians, or should Jack cut back on production, or should Canadians be forced to import more polluted foreign food from foreign farms?
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Last weekend, during the temper tantrum, he voted against Prairies Can, an initiative, an organization that has invested millions of dollars in Portage Lisgar. He voted against them. He voted against the Human Rights Museum.
Mr. Speaker,
that we be straight with people who are going through difficult times. That those difficult times are felt all over the world. And the fact that Canada is doing better than just about any other country in the world is cold comfort to people who are suffering. But what they need is solutions. Solutions like dental care, so that seniors can get the dental care that they need, that 1 million children can get the dental care they need. But of course the Conservatives voted against it. And so what they do by trying, it's really about not taking action on climate and cutting support for vulnerable people. That's really what this is about, Madam.
Mr. Speaker.
Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, what the member is saying is simply not true. Just before Christmas, we put out a study by Environment and Climate Change Canada that shows that carbon pricing will be responsible for between 20 and 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions between 2019 and 2030, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of carbon pricing and climate change, we have no lessons to take from the Conservative Party.
Mr. Speaker, I want to stress that slogans and videos are not going to fix this very complex problem.
Really unacceptable. Not only Air Canada, but all the companies also, Mr. Speaker. And once again, they have to do better, and they will do better.
What action is the minister taking to clean up this mess, and will he remove the arbitrary cap without further delay to save lives?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Mr. Speaker, that is precisely what this measure is about. It's about saving lives in the face of a humanitarian catastrophe. We have said time and time again, we will be flexible about the 1,000-person cap. Right now, the challenge is actually getting an initial list of people out that
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is really out of touch.
Mr. Speaker, our government obviously takes the increase in auto theft extremely seriously. That's why we have invested in a very significant way in the Border Services Agency and the RCMP.
It's pretty easy to make the Liberals look bad. They do that to themselves. But Canadians do need to see this stuff. Like, it's the only way that the word's going to get out that we need an election now. I think, like, I was hands in the air not long ago. I gave up on everything, but you can't do that. You've kind of got to care. Like, And I do care. It's fun. This channel is great. It's awesome. We're building a community of like-minded people that are interested in change. What that's going to be, it does look like Poiliev, and he's a fun guy to cheer for. I don't know if that's necessarily the best option, but it's the best option we have. So we're going to wrap up with that. Like and subscribe, Canadian Politics. Right here, we're learning all about it, sharing it with you, trying to have a good time in bad times, you know? It's tough. Stay warm, have something healthy to eat. We'll catch you next video.